glad you welcome. Hope you enjoy the show. Hello, 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 hello. Claim your fortune, tell me what you've been told. Hello, 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 hello.
Well, good evening, everyone. This is Jim and Joe Rizoli back with you again, doing our show. We want to welcome you here. Well, tonight we are going to talk about a subject matter that I'm sure some of you are familiar with, and this has to do with the USS Liberty. And we're actually going to play a real good audio that is an interview with Jim Ennis, I believe, and he really gets into it, what happened with the USS Liberty from his viewpoint. And I think that sometimes I find things on the internet that are really good, so I might as well use them. You don't want to invent the wheel. But anyway, before we're going to play that, because that's a good 20-minute audio. It's actually a YouTube video, but it's going to be an audio here. For the people watching this on our show, it's going to be a video. Audio, so that will be good for them. They'll see more pictures and things of that sort. But I think what we're going to do is, first of all, start off. The reason why we're bringing this topic up primarily is because, we feel that Israel is no friend of the United States. And this is a really good indication, particularly what happened here with the USS Liberty back in 1967, to kind of start the show off here to show that this was the case right from the beginning. And there are a lot of problems here having a friend like Israel. In other words, with friends like Israel, you don't need enemies. So anyway, that's why we picked this subject matter. It's kind of like just to set people's minds at ease, to show that when it comes to politics, international politics anyway, you can't trust anybody today. So anyway, that's just my little take on that. Joe, what would you like to...
Well, my take on this is that when you deal with Israel, you deal with a despicable, immoral, unethical, not enough words that describe the evil of these people. And this is why when I picked this subject, I figured this would show the people how Israel, how they really are as a people, how they really don't care about the United States, how they look at the United States as goys, little goyams, we're their little slaves, how they can do anything they want and they can get away with it. And history has proven this as we take on this subject of the USS Liberty. We did a show last week about Leo Frank and the start of the ADL, and how the ADL, which is obviously Jewish and all that, and how they protected a pedophile, a sexual pedophile, a molester, sexual predator, and what they did, they went out of their way to eventually bribe even groups like Pinkertons. The guy came up 3 weeks later, coming up with evidence, trying to exonerate Leo Frank. I mean, ridiculous. Trying to give people money that they would testify against the black men, Newt Lee and John Conley, that gave evidence of what happened. And when you read, if you get a chance to look into that audio we did on Leo Frank, you'll see some of the things that the despicable these people did. It's almost like they're not human. And so here we are. We come with the USS Liberty, and we come with what they pulled on these servicemen. And so you'll hear what's going to happen in this interview. And if you're not mad, you're gonna be. So we're gonna try to play it and see what happens here. So let's check it out.
This is Ken McDermott Rowe. Welcome to History Counts. 40 years ago, an American naval vessel, the USS Liberty, was the victim of an unprovoked and savage attack by a foreign country while it was stationed in the Mediterranean Sea. Today's guest, retired naval officer James Ennis, was an eyewitness to the attack. We'll talk about the bloody details of the attack, and we'll talk about the events that followed, described by a top U.S. admiral as, quote, an official cover-up without precedent in American naval history. We'll be back with our guest, James Ennis, after this short break. Our guest today is James Ennis, author of Assault on the Liberty, which recounts the devastating attack on the United States Navy ship the Liberty during the Six-Day War. Mr. Ennis, a retired U.S. naval officer, was serving as a lieutenant on the USS Liberty at the time of the attack. He's also one of the creators of the USS Liberty Memorial website, located at ussliberty.org. Mr. Ennis, thanks very much for being with us today.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Mr. Ennis, for those who aren't familiar with this attack, if you could put it in some context for us by telling us first when it occurred and where was the Liberty at the time of the attack.
This was on June 8th, 1967, just a bit over 40 years ago, in the eastern Mediterranean, along the Gaza Strip, which was the border between Israel and Egypt. We were sent out there. We were an intelligence ship, and we were sent out there to collect radio signals, actually primarily of the Soviets that were in the area. And I was officer of the deck on the ship that morning, 7 o'clock until noon, and so I brought the ship to the coast, and at about 12 miles from the coast, right, parallel the course, slowed the ship to 5 knots. We just proceeded down the coast.
What was going on at the war at that time? The war had begun a few days before the attack on 5 June, correct?
That's right. So this was the 4th day of the war. Quiet. We knew that over the mountains there was some shooting going on, but where we were was quite peaceful. The visibility was unlimited. High in the sky, airplanes were flying over apparently toward the war. And
Israel had been successful at that point in the war?
Oh, very much. In the first 30 minutes or so of the war, which was initiated by the Israelis, with a surprise attack, destroyed just about every Arab airplane in the Middle East, so that there was almost no opposition by the time we arrived 4 days later.
They had attacked Egypt, Syria, Jordan, all suddenly and by surprise?
Yes. Nasser had been making some noises on the coast, but he had no intention of invading, but very, very bellicose. And Israelis have admitted since then that they knew he was not going to attack, and they used that as an excuse to capture more Arab land. So that was what was going on, and they didn't want the United States to know of their plans.
They had a particular plan that actually was an attack that was going to go on the morning of 8 June, isn't that correct?
They planned to invade the Golan Heights and capture the Golan from Syria on the 8th of June.
And this was not anticipated by the international community? This would have been a surprise?
It was feared. I talked to Secretary of State Dean Rusk afterward, and when my book was published, and he told me that they were afraid that Israel was going to do that, and they were trying to persuade them to hold back. Rusk said he stayed on the phone with the Israelis all night, urging them to keep their forces where they were and not to escalate the war because they were afraid the Russians would get into it.
So the U.S. was neutral in this war?
Officially, we were neutral. We appeared to be siding more with the Israelis than anything else, but we weren't taking an active role in this shooting.
And the Liberty was in international waters at the time?
It was. We were just past the 12-mile limit, which the Egyptians claimed as their territorial waters. Israel, I think, claimed 3, or perhaps it was the other way, but we made a point to stay just beyond the 12-mile limit where we wouldn't be be seen by either side as within their territorial waters.
Well, now, as you said, you were coming on deck for the 0800 watch, and this is in military time. It'd be for civilians 8 o'clock in the morning. You came on a little early, as I note from your book. What was the situation on the ship at that time?
It was the custom to relieve the watch closer to 7 or 7:15, just so that the off-going watch could have breakfast. I was officer of the deck from 7:15 or so until 12. This situation was quite calm. We had since it was a bright sunny day, and there was no sign of hostilities near us. We had men who were off duty sunbathing on deck. It was pretty relaxed. And around 11 o'clock, suddenly there was a puff of smoke on the coast. We didn't know what that was, but thick black smoke coursed down the coast in the wind. So we learned much later that was an ammunition dump that had blown up, but it really had nothing to do with us.
The officer you were relieving mentioned that you had some aircraft visiting you before you came up.
We did. Before I came on watch, around 6 o'clock, there was a slow Israeli reconnaissance plane that circled us. As soon as I took the watch, another airplane circled us. And then every 45 minutes all morning, about every 45 minutes, an Israeli recon plane or a pair of jet aircraft would come out and circle us 2 or 3 times.
Did you believe that those aircraft could identify the ship and its country?
We knew they did because, remember, we were an intercept ship, and we had 100 men down below that were with earphones listening to radios, and they heard these jet pilots and the recon pilots as they circled us. Each time they would radio their headquarters and say, we are circling in a ship with an American flag and men sunbathing on deck. So it was very clear that they knew who we were, and their headquarters knew who we were.
In fact, the flag was significant. You caused it to be changed.
We had been steaming across the Mediterranean at high speed at 17, 18 knots for nearly a week, and the flag had gotten dirty from smoke and tattered from the wind. So the first thing I did when I took the watch at 7 o'clock was to order that flag replaced. The signalman quartermaster protested because he said, that's my last flag. I don't have any more clean flags. And I told him, I don't care. We're going to show our brightest, cleanest colors in here so that these planes circling us know exactly who we were. I was relieved at 12, but I came back at 1 o'clock for general quarters. So I came on this time as junior officer of the deck. Another officer was at OD, but I still had the con, means I was driving.
So you were a naval lieutenant, which would be, for those who don't know, Navy rank would be comparable to an Army captain. So you were just one grade below the executive officer, Lieutenant Commander Phil Armstrong?
That's right.
So you're on the bridge?
I was on the bridge again from 1 o'clock until 2 o'clock. So at that point I was junior officer of the deck, and I was still driving. During the morning I was usually the only officer on the bridge, but for general quarters the captain and several other officers were there for that occasion. We finally we finished our general quarters drill at just before 2, and suddenly as I was being relieved, radar picked up 3 very fast boats approaching the ship, just coming over the horizon 15 miles away. And immediately over the top of the boats, we picked up 3 jet aircraft approaching the ship. I was just being relieved, and I went with the ship's photographer up to the next deck, the 4th deck of the ship, to try to take some pictures of these approaching jets. We had been, as I said, circled all day, and these were appeared to be more of the same. So I went up on the 04 level, and along the starboard side of the ship, that's the right side, I could see these jets passing down the side. They turned left and made a big 180-degree left circle and came straight down the center line, straight at us. The photographer with a Nikon and a long lens on it was watching them through the lens, taking pictures, and suddenly they started firing. We had men in all 4 gun mounts. There were just 50 caliber machine gun mounts. But from where I stood on the 04 level, I could see the direct hits to all the gun mounts as men men were just blown literally high into the air from the explosions. And then the first airplane passed overhead, and I looked out, and there was a second one turning to make its run. I had been hit by shrapnel from the first explosions, which broke my leg about 5 inches above the knee. My leg looked like it had two knees. Yet, remarkably, I was standing on one leg and thrown up against a railing, so I wasn't knocked off my feet. Everybody around me had fallen and was bleeding. I was able to, on one good leg, I was able to hop down the ladder into the pilot house on the next deck, where about that time the second airplane hit and blew more holes in the pilot house, and there was blood and men on deck everywhere, and captain calling to send a message to the Sixth Fleet that were under attack.
So Captain McGonigal, who later received the Congressional Medal of Honor, I understand, he immediately sent a request for help?
That's right. Now, that was difficult as the attacking airplanes were jamming our radios, so it took a few minutes to get a message out, because all we heard was buzzsaw noises on the radio frequencies that we wanted to use. But we did, within about 10 minutes, we got a message out, and we got a reply from the carrier Saratoga that was about 300 miles away, and they said, we're sending port immediately. Remarkable thing there was that we later talked to Captain Tully. He said as soon as his airplanes got to the horizon, he got a message from Washington saying to get those airplanes back.
Why did they call them back?
We have been asking for 40 years why they called them back. The official story is that they called them back because the attack was over. Well, that wasn't true at all. There were two separate launches of aircraft. The first one that was launched almost immediately, those were called back. It was more than an hour later that they sent another set of aircraft to our aid, and those also were immediately called back. Now, the Navy story is that there was only one launch of aircraft that as soon as they were launched, they got an apology from Israel saying that it was all over and that we didn't need help anymore, so they were called the jets.
Now, I understand that, yes.
That conveniently ignores the entire hour and a quarter or so that we were under attack.
Well, you were first attacked, I understand, by Mirage fighter bombers, but they were then joined by Mystère jets that went to napalm.
That's right. The Mirages actually exhausted all their ammo and armament, and they left the area and were immediately replaced by Mystères carrying more cannon and napalm, and so they continued the...
Isn't it unusual to hit a ship with napalm?
I think it is. They may have carried napalm because they use it a lot against the tanks in the desert, but it's probably unusual, but it's also pretty lethal, since they had already punched close to 821 6- and 8-inch holes in the ship with their rockets. The napalm would then slosh into the rocket holes and cause fires inside. It was pretty exciting.
Yeah, you say in your book, quote, the entire superstructure of the ship burst into a wall of flames, end quote.
That's quite so.
And you had quite a few casualties at this point, but this wasn't the end of the attack. You then, 1424, which would be 224 in civilian time, you had a surface attack from boats, right?
Well, that was 235, actually, that the torpedo hit, and that was followed immediately. They fired 3 torpedo boats, the ones that we had first seen when we first saw the aircraft. Those arrived at 2:35, fired 5 torpedoes, fortunately missed with 4 of them. One of them blew a 40-foot hole in the side of the ship, killed 25 more men in addition to the 9 who were already dead and dying from the aircraft attack. That flooded the large center compartment of the ship that held our intercept team and very nearly took us down. The ship took on a considerable list from all the water we had.
You're right, they continued to circle the ship after launching the torpedoes?
Yeah, and that's where, you get into the deliberateness of the attack. The Israelis' story, which they told the United States, was that at that point, as soon as they launched the torpedo, they saw our American flag, recognized us as American, and never fired again. And that is total falsehood. They fired the torpedo three boats came within 50 feet of the ship by the stern where our name was marked in large English letters, hovered around there for a few minutes, and then they circled us on and off for the next 40 minutes, firing at anything that moved. They fired on stretcher bearers on the main deck and bridge personnel. By this time, we had an oversized American flag. The one that I had hauled up had been shot down and was immediately replaced with the holiday colors, which was about 8 by 12 feet. So that flag was clearly shown, and our name in English. I mean, consider the difference between an Arab warship and an American Navy ship. We have our name in English on the stern and 10-foot-high letters GTR 5 on the bow. They claimed they thought we were the Egyptian horse carrier El Quasar, which was waiting to be scrapped. Port at Alexandria.
They claim that they mistook the Liberty for an Egyptian ship that was being scrapped?
Yes. The El Quasar was a horse carrier for the Egyptian cavalry. It was 265 feet long compared to our 450 feet or 540 feet. It looks nothing whatsoever like us, and they certainly knew that it was in port being scrapped. But when we didn't sink as we were supposed to, they needed an excuse, so they said that they thought we were the El Quasar. You
also lowered life rafts in anticipation of a need to abandon ship. What happened then?
We launched life rafts at 3:15. They immediately came closer, machine gunned the life rafts in the water, took one of them aboard, and left for a few minutes with that because we were being promised that Sixth Fleet aircraft were on the way, and they were obviously afraid that they would be counter the jets from the Sixth Fleet, so they left. At that point, they started sending, "We're so sorry, we thought it was an Egyptian ship. We apologize for the mistake," messages.
How many casualties did the Liberty suffer?
34 dead and 174 wounded. That number varies because there have been men within the last couple of years who have gotten Purple Hearts for wounds that weren't recognized for Purple Hearts at the time. But there's 174 wounded and 34 dead. So
as I understand it, that's about 2/3 of the whole crew was either dead or wounded?
Yeah, we had 297 men total.
Did you know they were Israelis by the end of the attack?
Most of us didn't. The airplanes that attacked us were not marked, and that's another indication that it was a deliberate attack. Nobody saw markings on the attacking aircraft. The attacking motor torpedo boats apparently had a small Star of David flying, but that was not seen by very many people, if any. Little was known about who was attacking us until we heard it on the radio from picked up a broadcast from the BBC.
But the Pentagon and the Johnson administration accepted the Israeli apology and their explanation that it was not on purpose?
They accepted the apology. They declined to accept the explanation. Dean Rusk himself, as Secretary of State, has said many times that they accepted the apology for diplomatic reasons. They never believed their story about it being an accident or why it.
Nonetheless, there was a court of inquiry that was held immediately afterward. Did it result in a finding that Israel was culpable? Or did it address that?
The court of inquiry was told what to find. They concluded that the attack was deliberate and that Israel knew they were attacking an American ship. That was not the finding that they published because they were ordered by the White House to publish a false report. There is now online in my website and elsewhere a sworn statement by the legal counsel to the court who says they lied. They published a false report, and even that report was changed in Washington. The members of the court signed it and sent it to Washington, where pages were removed and other pages were rewritten.
There was an independent commission that studied the Liberty, headed by the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Thomas Moore, in 2003. And he said, quote, there has been an official cover-up without precedent in American naval history, end quote.
That's right. He published that report, which kind contradicts the official report and concludes that it was a deliberate attack.
Have any members, any surviving members of the crew, ever had the opportunity to testify about the attack before a congressional committee?
No, we have been asking for 40 years for an opportunity to testify. In fact, that's one of the ironies of this thing. There's a bankruptcy magistrate in Florida who spends his time trying to disprove the story of the Liberty. He's written a book in which he claims that there have been 11 or 12 official government investigations, 5 congressional investigations, and that they have all proven and concluded that the attack was a tragic accident. And that is a tragic lie. There has never been a government investigation that concluded that the attack was an accident, as the Israelis claim.
Would you, at that slight date, 40 years after the attack, would you like to see a congressional investigation?
We still ask for that. Nobody will give us that. We thought when the attack first occurred that the lies that were obviously being told by the Israeli government would be corrected when we had a chance to testify. But we were never allowed to testify. We were not allowed to tell our stories even to the Navy Court of Inquiry. And after that, no member of Congress ever held hearings. Our story was never legally, officially told anywhere in government.
Can I ask you one last question? And that I take that from an excerpt from the commission headed by Admiral Thomas Moore, 2003. He said, quote, "A danger to our national security exists whenever our elected officials are willing to subordinate American interest to those of any foreign nation," end quote. Could you give me your thoughts on that?
Oh, that's absolutely the case. In a situation like this, here we have a small foreign power that deliberately attacked an American ship, killed 34 men, and Congress won't even talk to those 34 men. They take at face value the excuse by the attackers and don't even listen to or allow the victims to tell the truth about what happened. The only way we have ever had a chance to tell the story is in places like this radio show and an occasional book or letter to the editor. The people who attacked us are much better financed and more numerous, and every time we tell a story, the bad guys are out there calling us liars. We can prove everything we say, and Congress won't listen to us. We don't have an opportunity to tell our story very much.
Well, thanks very much for being with us today, Mr. Ness, to tell the story. This is Ken McDermott Rowe, and I've been talking to Mr. James Ennis about the Israeli attack on the USS Liberty during the Six-Day War.
It's hard to believe that something like this can happen. Obviously, this, to me, is probably one of the most egregious things that have ever happened in the military in regards to a so-called friendly country doing this act to the United States. Hard to believe it ever could happen, but it happened. And it's been covered up all these years. You don't hear too much about it. The only people that talk about it are, American nationalists, people that, some of them that are into conspiracy theories too, which is fine, that, show how things are covered up. And, guys like this, us are doing shows like this. But the mainstream people don't get a chance to see this stuff. That's why this is going to be played on our TV show that's going to air at some point in time in the future, so that people can understand and see what Israel did to the USS Liberty. Because most people, the mom and pop type of person that goes to work all day, takes care of the kids, they will never ever hear anything that talks about the USS Liberty. I mean, who's going to talk about it? It's not on the main news. When an anniversary comes out, it might be covered by the main news, but I doubt it. It doesn't happen often, that's for sure, unless there's a lot of people there at the event. So most people aren't going to get a chance to hear this, and that's why we think it's important for people to see and hear what Israel did back in 1967. Joe, you want to cover a couple points there?
Yeah, there was a report that was given called the Moore Report, and on October 22nd, 2003, a group of admirals and people wrote information, and here's what they had to say. I might be interested in this. It says, "We, the undersigned, have undertaken an independent investigation of Israel's attack on the USS Liberty, including eyewitness testimony from surviving crew members, a review of naval and other official records, an examination of official statements by the Israeli and American governments, a study of the conclusions and of all previous official inquiries, and a consideration of important new evidence and recent statements from individuals having direct knowledge of the attack or the cover-up, and hereby find the following." So here's what's called the Moore Commission report, and they come out with information that they wanted discussed or answered or something done about. And here's what they said. They said, 1, on June 8th, 1967, after 8 hours of aerial surveillance, Israel launched a 2-hour air attack and naval attack against the USS Liberty, the world's most sophisticated intelligence ship, inflicting 34 dead and 173 wounded American servicemen, a casualty rate of 70% in a crew of 294. It's on the number 2. It says the Israel air attack lasted approximately 25 minutes, even though I think I've read that it was longer than that, but we'll go with what he says here. During which time unmarked Israeli aircraft dropped napalm canisters on the USS Liberty bridge and fired 30-millimeter cannons and rockets into our ship, causing 821 holes, more than 100 which were rocket size. Survivors estimate 30 or more sorties were flown over the ship by a minimum of 12 attacking Israeli planes, which were jamming all 5 American emergency radio channels. I just want to make a point before I go on here that when they got the ship back in dock, like he said here, they had 821 holes. 100 of them were rocket size. And do you know that they just patched that whole thing up? They patched the whole boat up so that nobody would basically see anything that was a remnant of that incident. I thought that was kind of interesting, you know. And then the boat just went on and went where it had to go, you know. All right, so anyways, they go on. It says here that the torpedo boat, number 3, the torpedo boat attack involved not only firing of torpedoes, but the machine gunning of Liberty's firefighters and stretcher bearers as they struggled to save their ship and crew. The Israeli torpedo boats later returned the machine gun at close range 3 of the Liberty's life rafts that had been lowered into the water by survivors to rescue most of the seriously wounded. Now, as to that incident there, on one of the other videos we saw, they said that I don't think there was anybody in the boats. They actually threw the boats overboard because some of them were on fire or whatever, and then they saw them shooting at these boats, and one of the naval men said, "It's a good thing nobody was in the boats." But they were in violation of all protocol about firing on boats, that were to save people, stretcher boats and all that. And but it just shows you the moral quality of the Israelis. They don't give a hoot. They'll kill anybody. It doesn't really matter. Now, when we will listen to another video, they were interviewing some of the people that ran these speed ships, the torpedo boats, and you should hear their story. I mean, they defend. They don't say anything, basically.
Well, you talk about the Israelis.
Yeah, the Israelis. The Israelis don't say anything that was really bad, which just shows you that these people are just despicable people. They don't remember them. They don't have any memory of anybody shooting at lifeboats or anything like that. They're just despicable. That's incredible. They really, when they interviewed the Israelis, believe me, they really didn't get much out of them. I'll tell you that.
Well, they didn't want to talk.
Right.
I mean, why would you think that they would?
Well, it just, it was, especially when he was talking about that secret thing. I don't know what he called it. Well, anyways, it says 4. It says that there is compelling evidence that Israel's attack was a deliberate attempt to destroy an American ship and kill her entire crew. Evidence of such intent is supported by statements from Secretary Dean Rusk, Undersecretary George Ball, former CIA Director Richard Helms, former NSA Director Lieutenant General William Odom, U.S. retired Admiral Bobby Ray Inman, U.S. retired Marshal Carter, former NSA Deputy Oliver Kirby, and Major General John Morrison, U.S. Air Force retired, and former Ambassador Dwight Porter, USA Ambassador to Lebanon in 1967. And it goes on 5 that the attack of the U.S. in attacking the USS Liberty, Israel committed acts of murder against American servicemen and an act of war against the United States. This is something that we totally agree with. What happened here was an act of war. How this was allowed to, be, put under the rug or whatever is incredible. Other instances show that Lyndon Johnson, even though he acknowledged to certain people that this was a deplorable act, an election was coming up, and he wanted to placate to the Israelis and the Jews in America, because he knew that if he started to come out against that, the election would have been a real tough thing to win. So he saw what happened to John Kennedy.
Right. I mean, John Kennedy seemed to be against the Israelis in a couple things, right? About their nuclear weapon program and things like that. And a lot of people, some people, not a lot, but some people think Kennedy was killed with Israeli backing behind it. So probably Johnson was saying, I better shut up about this, because I could be ended up dead.
Well, that is true too, because when you look at history, and I'll give you an example of the Kennedys. Joe Kennedy, the father, when he was coming over from Britain, because he was the ambassador to England or Britain or whatever, he feared for his life. He thought Churchill was going to bomb the boat, because you got to remember, Joe Kennedy was very favorable towards Germany, and even John F. Kennedy Jr. He wrote a book, and he visited Germany when he was not a youngster, but probably in his 20s. And so they really didn't have a lot bad to say about Germany. So they worried for their lives. But to show you the extent that these people will go to, Joe Kennedy Sr., I guess his name was Joe Kennedy. Yeah, the oldest kid. He was in the services, and he flew a plane. I think it was over England or Scotland or something. I forget what happened. But the whole plane blew up. They said it was one of the biggest explosions ever that happened in that area. I mean, it was almost equivalent of an atomic bomb, for crying out loud. He had so much bombage on that plane, and it blew up. So don't think that people were after the Kennedys. And they still were after the Kennedys, because then John F. Kennedy was killed. And then after that, we had the problem with the Kennedy, with the Chappaquiddick Edward Kennedy. Look at the problems that happened there. And then look at what happened with John F. Kennedy Jr. Flying his plane, and all of a sudden he died. So there are people that are out to kill people, especially somebody had it in for the Kennedys. And this is something I have no doubt that all of this could be led to Israeli or Israel in all of these killings. That's my opinion, including 9/11 and the marathon bombing and everything else. But that's another story. Anyways, we go on here. It says here in part 6, that fearing conflict with Israel, the White House deliberately prevented the U.S. Navy from coming to the defense of the USS Liberty by recalling 6th Fleet military rescue support while the ship was under attack. Evidence of the recall and rescue aircraft is supported by statements by Captain Joe Tully, commanding officer of the aircraft carrier USS Saratoga, and Rear Admiral Lawrence Geis, the 6th Fleet Carrier Division commander. At the time of the attack, never before in America, in naval history, has a rescue mission been canceled when the American ship was under attack. Can you believe that? A ship is under attack, and they call back the planes. Incredible. As it goes on, 7. that although Liberty was saved from almost certain destruction through the heroic efforts of the ship captain William L. McDonald and the brave crew, surviving crew members were later threatened with court-martial, imprisonment, or worse if they exposed the truth and were abandoned by their own government. So that was an incident. Imagine that. They would have been court-martialed. These guys were in fear. Some of them in fear, they said, for their lives. 8 here, it says that due to the influence of Israel's power supporters in the United States, the White House deliberately covered up the facts of the attack from the American people. And of course we see that with the way President Johnson did what he did. They actually had to get on the phone with McNamara, and after McNamara was on the phone, Johnson got on the phone, and he said, sink the damn ship, let it sink. I don't want cause a problem with Israel or whatever, his neighbors or whatever. My good neighbors Israel or something like that. At that instance, Johnson should have been arrested for being a traitor to the country. He should have been put in shackles. And, it says 9, that due to the continuing pressure by the pro-Israel lobby of the United States, this attack remains the only serious naval incident that has never been thoroughly investigated by Congress to this day. No surviving crew member has been permitted to officially and publicly testify of the attack. Can you imagine that? Israel and the Jews always say, we don't have any control over anything in the United States. We don't control anything. And yet it says here the pro-lobby stopped any person from testifying in this incident. And they don't have any power. We don't belong. This isn't the United States of America. This is the United States of Israel. 10, that there had been an official cover-up without precedent in American naval history. The existence of such cover-up is now supported by statements of Rear Admiral Merlin Starring, USN retired, former Judge Advocate General of the Navy, and Captain Ward Boston, USN retired, the Chief Counsel of the Navy's 1960 Court of Inquiry of a Liberty attack. And as it goes on, 11, that the truth of the Israel attack and subsequent White House cover-up continues to be officially concealed from the American people to the present day and is a national disgrace. And it just goes on. The last one says that danger to our national security exists whenever our elected officials are willing to subordinate America's interests to those of any foreign nation, and specifically are unwilling to challenge Israel's interests when they conflict with America's interests. And it says this is evident their failure to defend the USS Liberty and the subsequent official cover-up of the Israel attack endangers the safety of Americans and the security of the United States. So it goes on basically say, whereas upon we the above signed this statement saying blah 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 blah. I'm not going to go through every single thing about it. So anyways, that was the thing that they wrote up showing that this incident was a deplorable situation. And
Well, I want to make a comment about obviously what happened here is pretty easy to see. They wanted to sink that. They actually wanted to sink the boat. They didn't succeed in that because then the boat would have been on the bottom of the ocean. Everybody would have been dead. And then the United States they were going to blame the sinking of the boat on Egypt, obviously. So the United States was very close. They were a phone call away from dropping a nuclear bomb on Egypt. And so, once they found out what happened, obviously they didn't do that. But just think about that.
Minutes away.
They were minutes away from bombing Egypt because of this event. And, Israel, pretty much that's what they seemed like they wanted to do. They wanted to, that's why they came in there with the jets with no markings on them, because they wanted to make it look like Egypt did it to them. And, why Egypt would bomb an American boat, I don't understand why, unless they felt they were in jeopardy. Maybe, I don't get it why they would. But of course, that boat was like an NSA boat, and who knows the information they were trying to pick up. That's a whole other story.
They could pick up any radio signal And that was what the problem was that Israel probably was mad at.
Well, I don't know. Maybe to me it looks like they didn't probably want to hear. They didn't want the United States to hear what was going on with them bombing everybody around them.
Right, because they came in and butchered everybody.
Right.
And they didn't want to hear that, and they didn't want that on public record, so they decided to bomb the ship.
Right.
And not bomb it, but sink the ship, because then the ship sunk. Nobody's going to know why it happened. The ship would go under, but it didn't go under. That was the problem. And like we said, American airships were carrying nuclear warheads. The ones that went out from the aircraft carrier. I'm not sure if that was the Saratoga. But whatever the carrier it went out from, they were carrying nuclear warheads to bomb Egypt. And they were called back. It would have been a catastrophe, because in that instance, Russia had at least, they said, 100 boats in the Mediterranean, 2 at the time, and this would have been a catastrophe. And yet, thank God, the cooler heads reigned, but the problem was what happened. I mean, that's the situation.
Well. Anyway, I just want to make a couple things that I just thought was, when the Israelis say they didn't recognize the boat. I mean, you got to be kidding me. After shooting their rockets into it, and then they put napalm on it, and then they shot the lifeboats. I mean, to me that is not a mistake. You see what I'm saying? In other words, they definitely wanted to see that ship go down. It didn't happen, and they were pretty mad about that. Now, the other thing I have here, I wanted to play. We have a few minutes, and this is a song someone wrote about it. I think I'll play it. It's only a few minutes. It's a USS Liberty song, and let's listen to what that is. Okay.
Well, the time has finally come for the story to be told that should have been listened to a long time ago. In 1967, on the 8th day of June, came the attack of the Liberty and the needless loss of many of the crew. And the Liberty fell like a wounded, dying lamb. The men and their lives betrayed, and their souls were surely damned. And all the fear and the death and the pain will never depart me. I'll hear the bombs again. I'll hear the bombs again. They said that Israeli forces knew not of the Liberty's true identity, and so they took advantage of the serenity. They attacked the silent ship, making a 40-foot hole in the starboard, killing 34 and wounding almost 200 more. Their jets sending down merciless napalm. It looked like a devil's Star Wars, and the Liberty fell like a wounded and dying lamb. The men and their lives betrayed, and their souls were surely damned. And all the fear and the death and the pain will never depart me. I'll hear the bombs again. I'll hear the bombs again. I'll hear the bombs
All right. Well, that was a song I came across, and I thought that was a pretty good song. But again, there's someone that had some feelings about what happened. She probably, I'm not even sure who wrote the song, but she probably had some relative on that, on the ship. And another thing I want to bring out here too about, a lot of people that have talked about the USS Liberty. There's a site here called the USS Liberty Memorial Site, and it kind of bothers me to see what they said here, because we have a lot of viewpoints on a lot of different subjects, but maybe Joe, you can read this here, because what's happening is, obviously our viewpoint towards Israel is not a good one. I don't know how you can look at the U.S. Liberty situation and feel good about it, any way, shape, or form. But a lot of people don't want to tie this into other people that have other views about Israel in some other way. Now notice what they're trying to do, some of these sites is distance themselves away from anti-Semitism. Now, I don't know how, if you don't like what Israel did here, you're going to be considered an anti-Semite. So I don't know how they can even say this, but Joe, read what it says.
Here's what bothers me. This website is called the USS Liberty Memorial. Okay, and it's at the GTR5.com, because that was the name of the boat on the side of the boat, GTR5.com. This website looks like it's by Jim Ennis, who wrote one of the books on the USS Liberty. What is disturbing and what really bothers me about this is he has a thing here on this page called Anti-Semitism and the Anti-American Apologists. He goes, the USS Liberty Memorial website abhors the racist and extreme position taken by anti-Semitic, Holocaust denial, conspiracy theorists, and other such groups which often seek to identify with us and to usurp our story as their own. We have no connection with and do not support or encourage support of any of these groups, including National Alliance, National Vanguard, the New Order, National Socialist, the French Connection, Liberty Lobby, American Free Press, Republic Broadcasting, USS Liberty Radio Hour, Stormfront, or other such groups. We wish no harm to no one and encourage social justice and equality for everyone. We seek only accountability for the criminal acts perpetrated against us and do that without help from hate mongers. Now, and here's what really gets me mad. These people don't get it, and they wonder why they haven't gotten anywhere with this USS Liberty stuff. They start attacking people. Can you imagine? American Free Press, Republic Broadcasting, USS Liberty Radio Hour, because he says that we're hate mongers, or people who believe in Holocaust denial. See, apparently what's happened here, Jim Ennis and his group of people are stuck in gear on only what happened to them, and they don't get it of what
the big picture.
Yeah, the big picture of what happened to them. Even though he does go on and say on the Israeli side, the group of pro-Israel, anti-American critics of our story, while small, persist in launching loud, vicious, and ad hominem attacks on anyone who attempts to discuss the deliberateness of the attack. These anti-American apologists refuse to discuss the facts of the case. Instead, they rely on propaganda and charge anyone who questions the Israeli position with being anti-Semitic. Yet he's on the ball there, showing you that people on the Israeli side are going to start questioning this as anti-Semitic. But he doesn't get the whole picture of what Israel is involved in, what these type of people are. And it shows they are involved in Holocaust lies. And he talks about accountability. He wants a social justice, equality for everyone, and accountability. Well, we want accountability too, especially when it comes to other topics such as the Holocaust, which obviously Jim Ennis hasn't researched, because if he did, he'd be a Holocaust denier, and he'd be anti-Semitic, which he rightly should be, because the anti-Semitism exposes the lies of the Jews. That's what makes us anti-Semitic. We expose Jewish corruption. If you want to call it anti-Semitism, that's fine with you. You can do that. But that's what it is. Exposing the criminality of Israel exposing the criminality of the Jews, exposing the criminality of what they've done in America. That, if you want to label that anti-Semitism, good. Label me an anti-Semite.
Now, I want to just make a point here for those who are watching this on our show here on the cable station, that what bothers me about all this is the fact that everybody will call you anti-Semitic because you don't like what Israel does. But do the Jews in the town here, do they really understand what Israel has done? I mean, who are they more loyal to? Are they more loyal to the American government? And even though I don't agree with what the American government is doing, a lot of things, but the fact is, you don't take sides with Israel, especially when Israel is trying to harm your government. But again, these people, they're cowards. They don't speak out. They go along with the program, and this is where we are today.
But Jimmy, see, my point is, this is why this group, this USS Liberty group, is in limbo, because they don't take it further.
No, I understand that.
They don't take it further.
I understand. This is why all these groups are in limbo, because none of them really attack the problem where it is, and Israel is the problem. So anyway, we are trying to bring people's attention to these points, but a lot of people just want to, play the race card, the anti-Semitic card.
I can't believe that they're attacking American free press. American free press, the Liberty Lobby, and American free press, which talks about everything without censorship. They're free. They don't take advertising, and that's why they can print what they print, because they expose the lies. And we have people like Jim Traffic that write for them, and Michael Collins Piper and all these people, which is good for us.
Right. Well, anyway, that's pretty much it for our show on the USS Liberty. Hopefully, we brought it to your attention that Israel was responsible for this horrific event back in 1967, the murder of Americans on that ship, and they are involved in things today too. Don't think they're not. They're involved with some real shady things to do that are killing Americans also. So hopefully people will see that. Israel is two-faced, and they're going to be exposed. And hopefully at some point in time, our American government will take us a firm stand against them. I don't see it happening, but we can have a hope of that. Well, anyway, that pretty much sums up our show tonight. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Hello, hello. I bid you welcome, hope you enjoy the show. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Claim your fortune, tell me what you've been sold. Hello, hello.